I still remember the exact second I realized my family had never seen me as a person. I was standing in my own driveway, barefoot on the hot crushed oyster shells that I'd raked smooth myself the previous spring, watching my mother orchestrate the theft of my life, like it was a moving day block party. The sun was brutal, the kind of low-country glare that turns the air into soup, and there she was in her pastel capris and visor, pointing at boxes like a foreman. My sister Sage was wrestling a plastic bin labeled bathroom, do not drop, up my front steps while her kids, Lila, Jonah, and little Finch, ran in circles through my sea oats, shrieking with joy because they thought they'd finally hit the jackpot, beachfront property for free. And my mother looked up, saw me standing there with my heart in my throat, and smiled the same smile she used when I was 8, and she told me Santa wasn't coming because I'd been difficult. Lennon's sweetheart, don't just stand there. Grab the other end of the dresser. We're losing daylight. I couldn't breathe. My lungs had forgotten how. All I could do was stare at the mountain of their belongings now colonizing my porch that I had rebuilt with my own hands after the last hurricane tried to take it. The porch where I drank coffee every morning and told myself, this is mine. No one can touch this. The porch that still smelled faintly of the linseed oil I rubbed into the boards while crying over the closing papers because I was so terrified I'd made a mistake buying a house I could barely afford. Sage dropped the bin. Something inside shattered with a wet, expensive crunch. She wiped sweat off her forehead and rolled her eyes at me like I was the one being dramatic. Don't start, Len. Mom and Dad gave you $5,000 toward the down payment. That's a stake. We're not asking for the deed. We're just reallocating resources. $5,000. $5,000 out of the 75 I bled for while working 90-hour weeks. Living in a studio that smelled like cat pee and broken dreams, skipping birthdays, funerals, weddings so I could squirrel away every penny. $5,000 that Mom had handed over with the same martyred size she used when she lent Sage money for acrylic nails. I looked past her to where 8-year-old Lila was already dragging a neon unicorn pool float toward my gate, shouting, "Mommy said the ocean is ours now." Jonah had kicked off his shoes and was sprinting toward the dunes yelling about building a castle bigger than Aunt Lenny's stupid house. Finch, for years old and sticky with melted popsicle, tugged on my shorts and asked in the sweetest voice, "Can I have the room with the stars on the ceiling?" Mommy said it's mine. Mommy had already assigned bedrooms. Something inside me tore open, so cleanly I felt the wind rush through the wound. I walked past them without touching a single box. My legs moved like they belonged to someone braver. I unlocked my front door, stepped inside the cool dimness that smelled like salt and cedar and safety, closed it behind me, turned the deadbolt, and slid down the inside wall until I was sitting on the heart pine floor I had sanded on my hands and knees for 3 straight weekends. Outside, I could hear them keep working. The scrape of cardboard on wood. Mom's brisk instructions. Sage complaining that the humidity was ruining her hair. The kids laughing like this was the best day of their lives. I stayed in there until the sun shifted across the floorboards and painted long gold bars across the living room. Until my legs went numb. Until the tears stopped and something colder took their place. Then I picked up my phone and made 3 calls that changed everything. First, the locksmith. I need every lock on my house changed today. I don't care what it costs. Second, my attorney. They're trying to move in without permission. I need to know my rights yesterday. Third, the non-emergency police line. I'm going to need an escort to remove trespassers from my property. Yes, they're family. No, that doesn't matter. I hung up, pressed my forehead to the cool wood of the door, and whispered to the house itself. I've got you. They're not taking you from us. That night, I slept with every light on and a cast-iron skillet beside my bed like some kind of deranged pioneer. I didn't sleep, not really. I listened to the ocean and waited for footsteps that never came. They came back 4 days later, convinced persistence is the same as righteousness. This time there were 2 moving trucks and Dad's pickup sagging under the weight of totes labeled in Mom's perfect Catholic school handwriting, Sage's shoes, kids' toys, Christmas decor, because of course they were bringing Christmas decor in October. They even had a manila folder of papers they called a family cohabitation contract, printed from some sketchy website that promised ironclad verbal agreements. Mom waved it at my Ring camera like it was the 10 Commandments. I watched the whole circus from my phone while curled in the pantry because I couldn't bear to see their faces through the window. Sage tried her key, rattled the handle, then pounded hard enough to make the seashell wind chime scream. "Len Sage, you open this goddamn door right now. We have children with nowhere to sleep. Children who had never spent a single night here. Children who had a 4-bedroom brick ranch with a pool 20 minutes inland that my parents still paid the mortgage on." Dad tried once, voice cracking. "Pumpkin, please. Let's talk this out like adults." I didn't answer. I couldn't. My throat had closed like a fist. The police arrived before they'd unloaded the second truck. I stepped onto the porch barefoot, hair knotted, eyes swollen, clutching a folder thick with documents like I was about to defend a doctoral thesis titled "This Is My House." Actually, the lead officer, a woman with kind eyes and zero tolerance. 4 nonsense measured in millimeters, flipped through the deed, the mortgage, the insurance rider, the bank statement showing every single payment made from my account alone. She looked at my mother, my own mother, and said the sentence I still taste like cold champagne on a broken heart. "Ma'am, this is private property. You are trespassing. You have 10 minutes to leave or you'll be removed in handcuffs." Sage lost her mind. Full meltdown, snot and mascara and accusations that I was murdering my niece and nephew's childhood. Mom kept repeating, but I gave birth to her like the universe had a return policy on adult children. Dad stood by his truck looking like someone had punched him in the soul. They left with their boxes still sealed and their pride in pieces. I stood on the porch until the dust settled and the gulls came back. Then I walked inside, locked the door, and threw up in my kitchen sink. I thought that would be the end. I was so naive. 4 days later, I was knee-deep in rebar and concrete at a job site when my phone rang with a Charleston County number. Child Protective Services. Someone had reported that I, Len Sage, had evicted 3 minor children into homelessness and placed them in immediate danger of homelessness and neglect. I had to sit down on a stack of plywood in the pouring rain while the investigator asked if I was aware my niece and nephews were now at risk of sleeping in a vehicle because their aunt locked them out of their home. I drove home doing 90 on the connector, crying so hard the windshield wipers couldn't keep up. The investigator came the next morning. She was gentle, almost embarrassed. I laid every document on the kitchen island like I was dealing poker with fate. She watched the Ring footage. She read the police report. She closed her notebook and said, "This is weaponized reporting. Case closed. But document everything from now on." She paused at the door. "You okay, Miss Sage?" I laughed until I gagged. "Ask me in a year." That night someone tried to pry open the back door. The new deadbolt held, but the camera caught a flash of Sage's red high tops sprinting down the boardwalk. A week later, I came home to find my front door yawning open like a scream. Inside, every drawer dumped, mattress gutted, books shredded, the word selfish carved into my grandmother's antique dining table with what looked like a house key. They'd used a copied key I didn't know existed. Left a post-it in Mom's handwriting on the fridge. "You always did think you were better than us." The police lifted prints. Sage's on the knife block. Mom's on the mirror. Dad's on the back door handle like he'd stood lookout while they destroyed everything I loved. That was the moment I stopped praying they would change. I hired Valentina Cruz, the most expensive shark in Charleston. The one who wears blood-red soles and smiles like she's already won. We built a file so thick it needed its own roller bag. Police reports, Ring footage, text message novels of guilt and rage, bank records of every loan never repaid, the fake cohabitation contract, the lipstick message, the CPS report, the carved table. Then we went to war. Civil suit for damages and emotional distress. Restraining orders. Criminal complaints for breaking and entering, vandalism, harassment, filing false reports. The hearing was in late April, the air thick with jasmine and dread. Mom wore the pearls she wore to my college graduation. Sage cried on cue. Dad stared at the floor like he was trying to disappear into the tile. The judge, a woman with steel hair and zero patience for weaponized tears, read the evidence for 51 minutes without blinking. When she finally spoke, her voice was quiet thunder. The court finds an egregious, sustained campaign of harassment, property destruction, and attempted theft of residence. Restraining orders granted. 5 years. 500 yards. Any violation is immediate jail time. Mom made a sound like a kicked dog. Sage screamed that I was dead to her. Dad looked up once, just once, and the devastation in his eyes almost broke me. Almost. I walked out into sunlight that smelled like resurrection. The silence afterward was sacred. No more 3 a.m. texts calling me a disappointment. No more drive-by welfare checks. No more wondering if today would be the day they finally burned it all down. I rebuilt anyway. New doors. New locks. New mattress that feels like sleeping on a cloud. New dining table I built myself from reclaimed heart pine, sanded it smooth while crying and laughing at the same time. Painted the bedroom the color of sea glass after a storm. Hung a sign above the bed that says this house is protected by audacity, therapy, and very good locks. I adopted a retired racing greyhound named Reverie who thinks every human was placed on earth to scratch his ears. We run the beach at dawn, 2 creatures learning how to take up space without apology. I turned the second bedroom into a library with a window seat that looks over the marsh at sunrise. I host supper clubs on the porch for people who show up because they want to, not because they need something from me. We eat low country boil and drink wine that costs more than $12 and laugh so loud the ghosts have to cover their ears. Some nights the guilt still slinks in wearing mom's perfume and dad's disappointed sigh. It whispers that I murdered my family for square footage. Then I walk barefoot across floors, I refinish myself, pour a glass of something expensive on the porch, I rebuilt plank by plank, and the guilt backs off because this isn't square footage. This is sovereignty. This is the sound of a woman who finally stopped apologizing for existing. People still ask why a single woman needs 3 bedrooms on the island. I smile and say, 1 for me, 1 for my dog, and 1 for every single time I chose myself and the world didn't end. Because here's the secret they don't put on greeting cards. Cutting off family doesn't feel like freedom at first. It feels like amputating your own heart with a rusty spoon. You wake up reaching for people who aren't there anymore, and the phantom pain is brutal. You replay every holiday, every birthday, but we're family and wonder if you're the monster. But then one morning the sun hits your face through windows no one else has a key to, and the quiet doesn't feel empty. It feels like breathing after 33 years underwater. You brew coffee in a kitchen that doesn't echo with demands. You fall asleep to waves instead of accusations. You realize the greatest revenge isn't watching them suffer. It's waking up in the exact place they swore you'd lose and realizing you are not just surviving. You are radiant. You are whole. You are finally unapologetically enough. So, if you're watching this and your hands are shaking because you just changed the locks, if your phone is full of messages calling you cruel for saying no, if you're lying awake wondering whether protecting your peace makes you the villain, listen to the woman who used to flinch at her own doorbell. Your boundaries are not betrayal. Your home is not a homeless shelter for people who refuse to grow up. And the love that demands you burn so others stay warm was never love. It was theft wearing your mother's smile. I know the ache. I carried it for decades like a second skeleton. But I also know this. One day you'll stand barefoot on a porch you fought for with shaking hands and salt in your lungs, and you'll realize the tide only takes what was never yours to carry. And what remains, what you bled for, cried for, rebuilt board by board, is everything. It's the sound of your own heartbeat in a house that finally knows your name. So tell me in the comments, what door are you ready to lock forever? I'll be right here, barefoot on my porch, wine in one hand, deadbolt in the other, living proof that the other side of no is beautiful. The tide always comes in, but it only carries away the weight you were never meant to hold. See you there.